by 2024, we will unleash a massive multiplier effect. Health, nutrition, employability, poverty, malnutrition, child marriage, you name it, and we can have an impact on it. Once we can find all of these girls who are out of school, bring them into school, and ensure that they complete their education. So I'll stop here. I'm Safeena Husain. I educate girls.
Thank you so much, Safeena. Inspiring work, and excited to hear more about how Educate Girl works. Anshu, will you please jump in? And I think a lot of people think they know about Goonj, but I think you'll tell us more than everyone what the usual answer is.
Thank you. And then I think it's a daring act that instead of breakfast, you guys are listening to these conversations. In any case, as far as Goonj is concerned, there is a misconception that कि हम लोग कपड़ा इकट्ठा करने और बांटने वाले लोग हैं, that we actually collect clothes or use material and distribute it, or we are one of those disaster response organizations. We do all that, for sure we do all that. But I think the most important part for our work is why and how. I think it's not just about the what. So I would say that we are in the business of changing the language. We are in the business of changing the language for the development work, because I feel very sad when we call people like farmers who have come out with 6,000 different varieties of rice, and we still call them unskilled, bring them to the city for a few days and make them plumber and start calling them skilled. I think that arrogance somewhere we had to shatter, and we also had to focus on the absolute ignored issues in the society. So one of the issues which people know about Goonj is the clothing, and why we call it a metaphor and why we call it an ignored issue, because you talk about three basic needs of humankind. You say roti, kapda, makan, but if you see, kapda is absolutely ignored subject. It is either a disaster relief material or it's a charitable subject object. We are not understanding that on one part you're saying that half the world does not have 2 meals a day. On the other part, we're not understanding that anyone who does not have meals, or enough meal, hunger might be a visible thing, but that person does not have access to anything else also. And how sad it is that on one part you say it is a basic need. On the other hand, right from MDGs to SDGs to whatever DGs, you have 150 issues from domestic violence to global warming and now pandemic and whatnot, and you still don't find a subject which is called clothing, which is the first visible sign of poverty. Unfortunately, in a country like India, you are upper caste, lower caste, literate, illiterate, cultured, uncultured, fine, rich, poor, everything is decided by the piece of cloth which you are wearing. And why I'm talking about it, I'm just talking from the lenses of the ignored issues, because unfortunately, many of us try to do our best, but we still use our distorted lenses instead of using the lenses of people for whom we are trying to work. So simple model is 6,000 tons of material of Goonj, which we collect: cloth, utensil, footwear, old doors, windows, anything and everything which is reusable except a shit pot, as we often say in Goonj, which unfortunately people give that also. That goes through a very rigorous process of processing, because one of the biggest problem with the donation mindset is that we give what we have, we don't give what people need. And India is a country of diversity, fine. I mean, if you see those 4 or 5 states in southern India, all these states are eating rice, all these states are eating sambar. Ingredients are same, the taste of sambar is different, the quality or the variety of rice is different. It is so diversified, but when we talk about the development work, we see through one lens and start doing that. We broke those things. So it goes through a very rigorous process of matching the needs of people. It is converted in hundreds of different kits: family kit, wedding kit, volunteer kit, school kit, menstrual hygiene kit, and all that. Then it goes to thousands of villages across 25 states where we operate. We are 1,200 plus people as an institution, plus hundreds and thousands of volunteers and all that. And in the villages, people pick up hardcore water, sanitation, infrastructure work. So one village will come and say that we need water and we want to dig a well. Someone else comes and says that we need to, basically redo our pond, which is completely messed up in the last few decades. Someone says we need a road. hundreds and thousands of people get together in hundreds of these activities, work on those infrastructure activities, and then after that activity, they receive this family kit with a lot of respect, with a lot of dignity. So we have actually removed the charity from the most charitable subject object. The decision making is at the last person, because we are not going to the villages and saying that everyone will have a road. Rather, village will decide what will have. Like if I pick up just the last year's data, almost 300 kilometers of village road, 6 to 8 feet wide, strong, sturdy road across the country, 300 kilometers is being made by using this barter system, where on one side there is urban underutilized material, on the other side it is the rural skill, rural resources and rural labor. So that's the game we are trying to play. And another important thing, 2004-5, we also touched upon the absolutely ignored non-issue of menstrual hygiene, because we were working on cloth and we said that what is this lady using if you don't have enough to wear? And then we realized that in those days, 2004-5, if you go on Google and type sanitary pad, sanitary napkin, there was no major research available in India, no problem statement, no solution. It was a bit complicated for us because we thought that this is the country of microfinance and self-help group and all. How come we ignored this subject? Then we realized that crores and crores of women and girls in this country are using sand as jute gunny bags, rugs, rags, newspaper, grass, गाय का गोबर, भैंस का गोबर, whatever can absorb, or So that's how we started talking about it. Fortunately, it is a subject. Fortunately, it is opened up. Fortunately, many people are working on it. Unfortunately, it has become a fashionable subject, and people still think that by distributing product they can solve the problem, as if by distributing condoms we were able to control the population. I think those are important issues which we need to discuss when we discuss about these. Thank you very much. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Anshu, for this background on your work. I mean, it's so very interesting and multifaceted. So let's kick off this conversation. I'm going to ask you, Anshu, that, you started off small and Goonj has grown pan-India. You're present at every disaster. You work on just such a massive scale. How did that transition from being, a one-man show to a massive pan-India organization? I mean, how did that change happen? And also how did you make that transition, empower your people to take those leadership roles? And at the same time, for founders, it's a baby. So how did you also step back and let people rise within Goonj and take over?
Anshu, I think again, yeah, I have unmuted that. So I think one thing which is very important is that, again, for many institutions there are misconceptions, right? So even today, a lot of people think that Goonj is equal to Anshu Gupta and Anshu Gupta is equal to Goonj, because understand the decentralized model, how it operates, and especially in such huge geographies. Clear proof, I remember, I went through a COVID journey in May, and June I recovered days of isolation or whatever. And the first note which informed people that I have gone through this, actually, there was a statement in that now hopefully we know that Goonj is equal to not Anshu Gupta and Anshu Gupta is equal to not Goonj, because 26 days I was doing whatever I wanted to do. I was not forced to do anything. And then in July, again, I was admitted for 12 days, as an after effect. But the organization went on. The work kept on happening. And this time in COVID, for sure, it was a big scale. So I would say that some of the things which we did right from the beginning, certainly the dream was big. And we thought that, and then dream, I would not say from the day one it was big, but because when you get into this, you understand the potential of yourself, and you also understand the potential of that work. And then you are also exposed to the larger problem which you are trying to work on. So everything actually calls for a certain kind of scale. Only difference was that we said that in our case, the scale does not mean scale of the organization. But in our case, most important part to achieve the scale is the scale of idea. That how do people replicate, how do people copy? I mean, even in 2015 in the McSessay acceptance speech, I've actually said that we are giving you a copyright to copy our ideas. Because maybe other people can do it much better, much more efficiently, because they're coming with new things. Uh, how things started happening? We were not uh, very careful about the CVs of people. Okay, so we were not looking for typical people that who will solve my this problem, who is good for HR. I mean, you'll not believe most of the people in the institution are from absolutely different backgrounds. The entire HR is handled by engineers, okay, who didn't know even H of HR, but they went through, they learned. People who are handling account almost like 30, 40, 50 crore rupees every year. The only basic knowledge they had was a tally. Many of them learned that. Right from the beginning, we have been saying कि हमको ईमानदार इंसान दे दो, काम हम सिखा लेंगे, ईमानदारी नहीं सिखा सकते. Right? That we need honest people in the institution. We are not worried about the work. Work in any case, we didn't know. We developed all these processes, systems and all. And I would say that it is good that we didn't know. It is good that I don't read much. Okay. That I think that gave a lot of scope, to the team and to us to really innovate and find new system and build a new system. Of the kind of work which we are doing, we didn't find anything to study about it. I mean, if you think that Salvation Army or Goodwill Store are doing the same work, no, 100%. These are 100% completely different work. The only simple common factor is the old material. I mean, they choose the A grade material, sell it in the market to raise money. We transfer, and B and C grade material goes to the communities or wherever. We choose the A grade material, give it back to the community, and not as a charity, but as a currency, but as a reward. So we trusted a lot of people. We experimented. One of the key thing about Goonj also has been in every interview, what I used to take, now the other team members do take, कि हम आपका senior नहीं लाएंगे. Will not bring a senior to you, right? So if a 21, 23 old year or 25 years old person comes to you as an absolutely youngster, and you are saying कि यार HR handle करो, or you handle this Bangalore chapter, and we will make sure that we don't bring a senior to you. Now it is your opportunity, and we are there with you. And Amita, that works so well, and you will be happy to know that in the last 2 decades of our work, we haven't got even a single senior from outside the organization to any of our department. And it's a very structured organization. I mean, an institution with deal with 6,000 tons of material. That's almost about 100, 200 crore worth of material which we handle. Right? And then also, I call it guided democracy, fine, in our structure. That there are certain guidelines. For sure, there is a list of non-negotiable. So ethics or value system is 100% non-negotiable. But how to approach, what to do that. And in certain cases, also leave your emotions. So if I give you an example, when the COVID happened, an institution which gives even a single pencil or eraser as a reward to the kids, because we want to promote the sense of achievement, not sense of entitlement in the entire process. That institution decided that we will go full board and give material to people without any work and all. But you will be happy to know that when we decided these things, we achieved that, and certainly people worked after receiving that material after a month or two also, because we started talking about it as a karja, and then they started paying back for sure. But the most important part was the team which built a lot of systems of field visit report, partnership, onboarding, data management, whole lot of systems which we created in the last 2 decades. One night we decided to change all those systems and say that now we need shortcuts of all these systems, because at this moment, if we start saying that we need 7 days or 10 days to have a partner with due diligence and all, we will be absolutely, completely, miserably flawed. And that works so well. So trust is the most important part. Taking risk is the another important part, and understanding that you are not the only one who is honest on this earth. There are millions of other people who are there, uh, in front of you, who are more honest maybe, or who know the subject, and also valuing the skill of every single person in the system, and completely decentralized model. If you want to know, like many of my friends, now I have also become a little bit of senior, so I also have senior friends, and they call up and they want to talk about Karnataka operation, how many districts you work and where all are you working. I say, hold on, boss, that's not my job. I will have to bring in my Karnataka people, because they decide which district they want to work. They decide whether they have to work on water or sanitation, because we are actually making the last people our stakeholder. We don't treat them, or we don't call them beneficiary and ourselves a donor. That's the most demeaning thing. And the last point is that every single person who is even doing the sorting and processing, uh, we don't use the word employee. Everyone is called team. Everyone who is there on email is the part of operation team, and the person who is not on email is the part of processing team. So this is a very clear thing. There is no designation till date in the organization. Only I, in my mail or in somewhere, write founder director. All of us are called team Goonj. And it's very funny because people call and people want to, the moment you say I am part of team, I am team Goonj, they want to talk to some senior. Then those guys talk to the senior, and the senior also says team Goonj. But that's how we have been operating, and it's working well. I'll stop here, and if you have any other.
Yeah, no, thanks, Anshu. Anshu, that's very interesting how, you have such a kind of flat structure and so much, everyone's an equal. Very interesting how you built that to such a big scale. Can I just ask how many NGO partners do you have across India? And then how many people are within the Goonj team?
So we are 1,200 plus, which also include the peace rate people and the community workers and all that. I mean, these 1,200 plus people are completely paid by Goonj. That's the only source of income for them.
Okay.
We work with almost about 500 different organizations, which are community-based organizations, social entrepreneurs, panchayats, units of Indian Army in Kashmir, border road organization in Uttarakhand. So, I mean, we just very carefully choose those relationships that if you have to reach the reach Kashmir, especially in the non-valley area, the only way to reach there in the remotest part of the country is actually tying up with the army. If you want to work with the migrant laborers across Uttarakhand, who keep suffering because of the frequent disasters and are in bad shape, the best organization is actually border road organization, because they know all those migrants very, very well. And then we also have a lot of tie-ups with the panchayats and a large number of very grassroots, simple organization. To be honest, we are not successful in tying up with the big institutions in the country on implementation. Otherwise, on idea level, it is a different issue. We are much more successful in the last grassroots institution, that kind of tie-up.
Great, thank you so much. I'll move over to Safeena now. And Safeena, when you were talking about Educate Girls in your introduction, you said that you were doubling in size every 18 months. And I mean, that just sounds like, massive growth quickly. So can you tell everyone a little bit about how you managed that, sort of what the team size was when you started, and what you are now, and how did that all come about? How did you, what's your team structure? Anshu spoke about a very flat structure. What does your structure look like at Educate Girls today?
Yeah, and really, I mean, when we hang on a second. So in terms of, I think, our team structure and stuff, I think it's just so fascinating listening to Anshu, and kind of seeing where parallels are and where we're similar and where obviously we are dissimilar. But when we started out, we were just about 15 odd people, We started in Pali, Rajasthan, and it was me in Mumbai and our accountant, and he's still there. So he's been with us for a long time, and just about 15 people who are from that same district, completely local to the area where we started. Today, and some of them are still in the system today. I think the first district where we started working, Vikram Solanki, his family was farming there. He joined a data entry operator, and he's today leading our entire operations in UP. He has probably one of the biggest mandates under him, over 5,000 villages, massive team. But he, and his family still farming out in the district. But it's very similar to Anshu. You are growing your own timber. You are finding the right talent as proximate to where you work. And I think that has always been key for us. And we have again and again tried different permutation combinations, but we've seen, like, we ran learning camps for 10th standard girls for them to pass the 10th and the 12th. And in these camps, we had a variety of results, right? Somewhere 50% of the girls are passing. And then in some camps, up to 90% of the girls are passing. And the only difference we found was the tutor was from the local community, from the same village. The closer the tutor to the girls, the higher the result. It didn't matter. It didn't matter based on their, and like Anshu was saying, it's not about the skill or whatever. It's just how invested they are in that girl child. So I think we've always just really, really, really focused on as proximate, as close as you get to the ground, having all the systems and the process for your own timber. And so you are looking at people who join you as a Team Balika volunteer today, and then are growing within the system to handle hundreds of villages or even districts. I think values, absolutely key. But I think there's another piece that we at Educate Girls in terms of scale think about. And I think when you're getting to very aggressive scale, one of the biggest risks you have is about, there were times that I was 100 people in the team and I was hiring 150 people within a 6 to 8 months, right? So my internal culture, my values is always under attack because there are too many people coming in from the outside, and we work on gender. And we work in very difficult areas, bringing in the same gender biases. They're bringing in the same prejudices into the organization. So culture, values is probably the biggest risk to scale. And so I think growing your own timber and just making sure that the people who are letting other people in are people. If they're out there recruiting 800 people for UP, you know that if Vikram is letting this person through, this person's got to have the right values. This person is going to be. So I think that's how you kind of think a little bit about how you grow. The other elements, and I think as a leader, the only thing that I feel as a leader you need to kind of really focus on, and that we have, is having a clear vision of success. So whether it's me, whether it's Team Balika volunteer on the ground, if you close your eyes, we should all be able to see the same problem. We see a girl, we can see that she's not going to school, she's fetching water, she is working in the field, she's grazing the goats. And then if we close our eyes, we can all see the same solution. She's in her school uniform, she's got her books, she's going into school, she's having lunch with her classmates, she has a peer group, she has support, she's playing sports, she's completing her education, right? And I think that clarity of vision of you really need, all the way down, whether it's me, whether it is the last mile, whether it's a new person who's entered the system. And in addition to that, I think you have to give the entire team a very clear landing point. Where are we headed? We know the problem we're solving, we know what success looks like, but where are we headed? And I think there as well, like and we do this with our board, we take 6 months to build a 5-year plan, which is a roadmap. And it's like a Bible in everybody's hand so that everyone knows. You ask people, they'll tell you, yeah, we're going to UP. We will, probably do so much in UP. And in this particular year, we'll get to Bihar. This is what we're going to do. And I think those are some of the pieces that have really sort of been the pillars of allowing us to scale rapidly.
Thank you. I think, what you spoke about, that visual of, what is the girl's situation and what she could be, I think it's very powerful, and to kind of ingrain that into everybody's mind within the team is so important. So a follow-up question for you, Safeena. So, you spoke about the values of the team. And so how do you come together as a team regularly to, now that you've grown so big, how do you come together as a team regularly? And, what are the little ways that you're sure that all the way down this has, trickled down? How do you measure that internally?
Yeah, like right now, I think it's just so hard to even imagine the pre-COVID world where we were able to travel and do all of our meetings and kind of do all of that kind of stuff. Now, right now, it's on Zoom, and it's kind of like, at least since the last year, we've just found that now we don't have. So, for example, before launching the year, we have operations review meetings where everybody kind of joins, right? So, really creating those touch points. I think when you build your 5-year plan, the teams build it themselves. The communication of that really sort of simply, and it goes all the way down from to each of the districts. So let me put this. See, all of our districts. Let me explain this another way. All of our districts are almost self-contained units. So it's almost like we have these 20 odd districts that are hooked in together into the corporate office of the. But they're all sort of managing their own people. They all have the HR, the finance, whatever resources they need to deliver on the ground. They have that, and the budget and whatever else they need. So it's fairly decentralized. And communication, I guess, would be like annual planning or quarterly, and then at the senior leadership level. So I think through COVID, one of the things that we were doing, and obviously now in Mumbai we're not, was that even though everybody else was work from home, we had the senior leadership come in like 1 day a week, because we felt like if they were tight, then everything else down would flow as well as possible. If we had trust within the senior leadership team, if we had, if light couldn't get through our shoulders, then everybody else and everything else would be totally okay. But yeah, I mean, and COVID really, I have to say, has thrown up so many challenges, but it's also really shown us ways we can be connected a lot better and communicate a lot better throughout the team, just virtually. So that's kind of been good for us.
Great, thank you. So, you spoke about now having a very strong senior leadership team. So as that team, comes into play and is taking over most of the day-to-day operational things, how do you see your role changing, and where do you spend most of your time now that you know that you have, a good people in place to do most of the day-to-day things? How do you see your role changing as the founder?
Yeah, I think I've generally mostly spent my time on the same things that I'm doing now, which is the vision, future, sustainability, and coaching. And I think that just continues for me. So again, even though the organization has a plan till 2024, I'm already in the mode saying, okay, what comes after that? And usually I build a strategy almost 3 years in advance of the existing strategy coming down, because then I take 2 years to raise money towards it. If I'm going to, that's going to require $125 million, I have to build it, 2 years in advance, to then socialize it, and then to sort of be able to line up resources against, so that by the time it is 2025, I should, my clock that between 50 to 80% committed towards that strategy. Because that's my job. That's how I see it, is saying, okay, let me just constantly keep peering, around the corner and seeing what's coming. And then just keep on giving the rest of the organization that sort of future pathway. And then sustainability. I think as you sustainability, programmatic sustainability, right now we're always thinking, saying, okay, come 2024, even though we would have hit such a large scale, we're going to need at least 100 crores to make sure that the girls in our program in 2024, that their education is accounted for. That if tomorrow the money dries up, we have the funding put away for those girls to actually finish their 10th or 12th grade. So I think those are the kind of bigger pieces, the fiscal sustainability, because education is not a parachute in, parachute out 1-year project. For education, it's a multi-year. We see it with our own children. You have to invest year on year. So really focused on the future. What's the landscape? What's happening around us? What is our future? look like? What do the needs of our girls look like in the future? Making sure that there is funding, there is a roadmap, there is fiscal sustainability and programmatic sustainability built in. And then it's just about coaching team, whoever kind of, just really helping to build up the team further wherever required, whether it's the new areas or it's the new teams or it's the younger. Like, for example, now our focus is shifting from our district managers to our the DPOs, the district program officers, that are just one layer below. And just saying how we constantly building that bench for the future, because the biggest bottlenecks to and I think the third, because Govind is here, and I have to mention this. The third thing that I feel I have to constantly focus on is my own coaching, really. And we have Namrita, who's been my coach for many years now, because I say this again and again, and I can't reiterate how important it is. The role of the founder becomes the biggest bottleneck to scale. And we see this again and again and again. So half my time is just really about training myself to get out of people's way. It's training myself to just do and stay in my corner and not interfere and not be a bottleneck to what needs to happen. There are amazing people in the team. In the DIB, we had a girl who was a child bride. She'd been married at the age of 13. And she was now completing her 10th grade with her daughter. That's how long it had taken her to come back to education. Was her daughter was now in the 10th grade. And she was the highest performer in the development impact bond as a third party evaluator. Said, you know what, this woman's children have moved the most in terms of learning. So that's the thing. You've got to trust people, as Anshu said, get out of their way. And I think half my job is I stay out and I'm just looking sort of in the future and towards just making sure that there are resources and being helpful only when required.
Thank you. That's an answer that I think a lot of the younger founders who are on this call today, they'll find that very helpful. This is good advice. Anshu, can I ask you the same question, that how has your role changed and evolved as Goonj has expanded, and kind of where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years from now?
अभी मुझे लगता है अब लोग मुझे देख के डरते होंगे कि ये फिर कोई नया आइडिया लेके आ गया. I think that's what all of us do after a certain point, because now the operations are there, and then you are just you every day you go with a new idea. But I think to be honest, for an organization like Goonj, this has been very, very helpful, because otherwise for the last 2 decades we're doing the same mundane job of collecting discarded material from the society and processing it. So if we wouldn't have innovated, if we wouldn't have thought about so many other things which we are doing with that material, it would have been a very, very boring kind of job. Hamara jo, the way we operate is that we are not worried about the success. Okay, because I don't know what is success. I don't know what is scale. Fine. I mean, Infosys, Wipro and all might have 2 lakh employees or 40 lakh employees or 10 lakh employees. It might be a scale for them. For me, 1,000 people is also a scale. And in my opinion, a scale has to be the scale of impact. A scale has to be of how you change the mindset of people and how they change, or you work with them to change their mindset. So we work more on potential. We say, don't worry about the target. In any case, as an institution, we'll fix a target at the end of the day. But how do you really work more on your potential? And I think that's where I certainly play an important role, because it's important to tell people that how your work is impacting the last person. Imagine 70-80% of our people are coming from exactly the same background, where we are reaching to their families in the villages. Okay. Now, these people, unfortunately, by the word, are always called beneficiary, garib, bechara, unskilled and all that kind of thing. Those people understand that even when they sort a piece of cloth that has an impact on someone else's life, that actually becomes a trigger point. That motivates more people to do more. And it's a very closely knit team. We also, I think we work with a movement mindset. We don't have separate cabins. We don't have separate crockery for us. We haven't bought even a single chair in the last 2 decades. If you see our balance sheet, all of us sit on old discarded, collected furniture, from the people, because that's the value system. That's what we are telling the world. And there are two important spaces in our life. One is called Chabutra, uh, which is a small hall kind of thing which can accommodate 60, 70 people. So every 3 months, many of us used to spend 3-4 days together. We used to sleep together, eat together. खाना हमारे यहाँ अपना बनता था, and that's where we actually decide on everything. We never used to hire hotels in those days. The second important part is called Bolero. So we call it a very common term in Goonj is called Bolero meeting. So 7 people, in one go. Whenever I travel any area, and I'm talking about myself, but the other team members also do the same. So if I'm there in the eastern region, all the key people from all 3 eastern region offices, 6 of them, and I will come, and one of us will drive. We will spend 2-3 days in the field, and the entire Bolero chats, we call it Bolero meeting, that's why. And those become the crucial things, for all of us to decide what are we going to this in this particular region. And, in once a Jharkhand, people from Bihar and Odisha or West Bengal are also traveling. So we also get to see each other's work, in that way, because so people are not working in those silos kind of thing, but people are learning from each other, and that's how the leadership is also shared. Right? My role as of now is more as I think as a problem maker, not solver, because I do create a lot of things, come up with new ideas. I used to spend a lot of time in the seminars and now webinar, because I always feel that, and then many times, there is rift in that also, because I often go and I don't talk about Goonj, but largely talk about the sector and the strength of the sector and the skill which we already have. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that they can come and solve all our problems without understanding the sector, without understanding that thousands of us would have been vice president or MDs of many companies, but we chose to do this. Right? So we don't accept anyone who come to us with the preaching mindset. If you come with the learning mindset that we will learn from you, you will learn from us. It's a co-learning. Okay? And I always say that I am here because of Goonj. When I'm even talking today, so I'm here 100% because of Goonj, because that's the only thing which I've done in the last 2 decades. But I'm not here for Goonj. So I'm not here pitching for Goonj. That's not my job. That my work needs to do, that the work of the team needs to do. So I think I'm just the keeper of the value system, and making sure that I remain there as it is, and I'm using the word I. One of the exercise which many of us do, including it started with me, that every night before you sleep, when you review your day, you just try to find out that how many times did I use the word I, and then you realize how arrogant you are, because the credit goes to those hundreds and thousands of people. By the grace of God and love of people, you're the face of it, and you try to take the credit of everything which hundreds of people do. That keeps you a little bit maybe humble next morning. At least you will start with fresh eyes, not the existing eyes. So I think this is what we all are just trying to practice in the process. I am not a person, despite being in absolute logistics work also and handling material, I am not a person who will listen to people and say that we should always have CCTV cameras. A lot of people have suggested us. And I always tell people the day we put CCTV cameras in Goonj, eventually we might do, that's our failure. Because it will only catch the things after it happens. The issue is that why does it happen? Can we stop that? Can we work more on people instead of process and products? Because if people are respected, if you listen to people, if people find a space, if people find a connect, right? Large number of us are honest people. And it is an absolute non-negotiable. हमारे यहाँ एक कहावत है कि यदि किसी ने रुमाल चोरी किया तो वो चद्दर भी चोरी करेगा. So you catch hold of that person, when that small thing happens. That's absolutely something where we don't tolerate anything. And fortunately it's going well. I will not say 100% good, best, but at least we are aiming for that, and we are trying our best. And because we are trusting people, the only thing which we talk to the team leaders and the second layer and third layer, that you always remember one thing, that are you giving what you got? Period. So you got freedom to think, freedom to operate, freedom to take decisions, freedom to decide what you want to work on. You got a lot of respect within the team. Are you giving that to the second layer or the third layer of the team? That's the only parameter we do. And fortunately, we have enough people who join this place at 5,000 rupees a month or 80 rupees a day. And 17 years back, 16 years back, when we were nowhere, we didn't know what we are doing, people didn't know what we're doing, and the team is intact, and we still have large number of people who have even crossed 10 years and 15 years, and that's the only time when we started hiring people. Uh, and I think those are the people who are our uh, biggest asset, and these are the people who are giving me a lot of free time to do whatever I want to.
Thank you. Thank you. I think both of you have given such valuable inputs on how to empower your team and how to build and retain a culture within your organizations. I think this is really helpful for the younger leaders listening. So I'm going to ask people to put any questions they have in the chat right now, and I'll start asking those in a minute. I just wanted to ask Safeena, changing tracks a little bit. I wanted to ask Safeena that, you were talking about looking around the corner and planning, 2 to 3 to 5 years ahead. How did you make the required investments into communications and fundraising for your team, knowing, that you were growing and that you did need to have a much, much higher budget going forward? How did you do that? Because I mean, I know a lot of organizations struggle with that. It's very difficult to convince funders to put in that money to build for the future. So how did you approach that at Educate Girls?
I think let me first just say, like, I know even though when you're scaling, basically your need for money is actually doubling with your scale, right? So you have to go out there and find, and your budget just sort of doubles every year and a half, and so fundraising and communication are obviously key for the organization to be able to grow at that kind of pace. But weirdly enough, fundraising and communication are probably the least where we put investments and money. So to give you, we spend just about, I think now it's a little closer to 2%, but generally, historically, we spend about 1% of our budget on fundraising. And that is very, very, very low, sort of, compared to what you see in the sector. And communications or brand building or anything else is even less. So there's hardly any investment that we found that we have. And that's because, and so the flip side of that is that very few people actually know Educate Girls. There's only this very thin layer, people who with groups like yourselves or sort of strategic philanthropists or people who are looking at scale, or just a very thin layer of education funders who actually know Educate Girls. But nobody outside of that thin layer actually has ever heard of us, even though we have scale and we have a large presence in the communities we work with. Nobody knows us, and that's kind of been okay with us. And in terms of fundraising, what it's done is that most of the money I've raised is on the power of our on the power of our vision, our strategic plan, how we're operating, and the evidence that we've created in terms of third-party evaluations or the development impact bond, which was like a gold standard RCT. So a lot of the funding has come to us because of the quality of the program, the scale of the program, and the evidence that yes, this works and this works at scale. It hasn't come to us in terms of actual investment in fundraising. The only other thing that I'd say that we do, and we do very, very, very consciously, throughout the organization is how we communicate is that it has to be, and I call it simple English, simple human language. A lot of the times we find that in the development sector, we have a lot of jargon. We sort of make things complex beyond belief. So I remember like when I was going on the TED stage for Audacious, when I wrote it all up and I put it in front of my 8 and my 10-year-old daughters. And the minute I could see that they were looking around, they were just like looking really bored, I knew that like, I have to change what I'm saying. If they looked at me and they the word, I knew that I had to change it. And that's really where we practice all of our pitches, is in front of children, saying if they get it, if their attention is on flagging, then we're fine. Otherwise, we're obviously just doing something wrong. We're just using jargon and big words just for the hell of it, and which is not really required. But I think going forward, things that has happened is that it's a huge risk to the organization, is that we have very small number of donors. So we have donors who give us larger chunks, have major donors who are big strategic philanthropists, but we don't have a lot of diversity. So that's a massive risk to the organization. So I wouldn't say that this is a strategy everybody should run off with. I mean, see what's appropriate for you. Because as we are growing even further, that's the one thing that we're really worried about, is saying, let's look at other ways in which we should think about our fundraising and communications, because at that kind of scale, this would be sort of very high risk. So we are looking at thinking differently from a diversity lens more than anything. But again, I think we definitely don't chase money ever. We don't sit down with the fund and saying, let's do something innovative together. That is just not in our vocabulary. We don't go to, behind your factory, because that's where you will fund us for. We will go where the opportunity for impact is the highest. We will go only where the need is the highest, and we will go where, we are actually needed for the large number of out-of-school girls. So it is guided by the strategy, all the fundraising, all the investment that we raise, not by so much by where funders may want us to go.
Thank you. So a follow-up question from your board member, Ganesh. For a mission as large as changing lives for 40% of India's out-of-school girls, what do you estimate the funding requirement to be? What are you looking at for the next few years, at least?
For the next few years, I mean, I think, to solve a 40% of the problem of out-of-school girls in India, which is a huge ambitious target, our goal was about $125 million. And currently, till 2024, we're short of about, I would say, around $20 million. So that's the additional capital that we're looking for. And a large part of it, thankfully, through Audacious and through our current donors has been locked.
Great, thank you. Now I'll switch to Anshu and then back to Safeena. Louis has a question for both of you. Anshu, what keeps you up at night? What do you worry about? What do you think about?
Presently, for sure, the status of the development sector and also status of what is happening all across us. I mean, last year has been very, very painful, because the fact remains that wherever we work in the last 2 decades, and we call it development work, and I have been arguing this, that to be honest, it is not development work, because large development happens from 0 to 10. Okay, but if you talk about the communities most of us reach out to, and when there is a kida to reach as remote as possible, you see it more often. You work with the communities which are actually living on the minus level. 0 means at least 2 meals a day, couple of clothes, little bit of education, at least if nothing else, a primary education. If you see, we work with the people, millions of people in the last few years of our work, which are at the minus level, and we all made some efforts to bring them somehow to 0 or near to 0. And suddenly you see this last 1 year where those people are pushed back now maybe to -2. So in many cases, we feel that what is this happening? And on the other hand, the development sector itself is going through very tough phase in terms of resources, in terms of all those regulations and all that. So this is becoming very complicated for us. On one side, you see the distress of the highest level. On the other side, you find a lot of these bottlenecks. So Lois, that gives us enough to rethink, to work more, because we don't have any other option in our life. This is our kira. This is what we want to do in our life, and we will make sure that we find our own different ways to do what we want to do. This particular year has changed a lot of things. Many of us are not understanding the depth of it, that how it is important for many of us to reimagine the entire the way this country has been operating. I mean, something, and I started writing Povidi because I do my poetry, that came back in this particular phase on a very simple fact that if millions of those people, and which they are doing again, they started walking back to the villages, that the basic point about that is that we built a society where the trust does not exist, where the biggest corporate tycoons to the NGO leader to the biggest political person on this in this country, all the political systems, we have not built a society where people trust each other. If a family is not even, is not sure that the person who is the beneficiary of his or her services as house help, as driver, and as whatnot, and that person and that family starts walking 100 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers, and walking despite knowing all the odds, and that the transport is not working, there is something fundamentally wrong. So for me personally, it has been a painful personal journey of last 1 year. I see large number of people, including my team, because fine, Goonj has made sure that not even a single person of Goonj comes on the road, whatever way we stand with people. But the fact also remains that in the city, when people migrate, and they don't migrate by choice, people migrate by choice, people like me who migrate, that's the migration by compulsion. They only survive when 3-4 people of the family earn. So even if the Goonj job is intact, 3 other people in the family have lost the job. So enough to do, enough to feel happy at the end of the day कि यार कुछ तो किया, जो भी किया, and enough to do tomorrow. And so I think that's not a problem in the remaining life. कि रातों की चिंता नहीं है, to be honest.
Thanks, Anshu. Same question for you, Safeena. What keeps you up at night? What do you think about?
What really keeps me up at night, and especially after COVID, is what our girls are going through. When we entered COVID, honestly, the thing that really kept us all up at night was that when migrants were walking back, when there was food shortage, when everybody, and again, we're in a sort of lockdown scenario, again, we're going to see people losing their livelihoods, etc. We realized, and we knew it, that even that our girls would be the hungriest. And that's because in normal times, even in normal times, our women and girls are the last ones to eat in the house. And so when you were going to have a situation where food was going to be more scarce, who's the person who's going to bear the price of this and the highest burden of this? And I think that's what really, 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 the lockdown, people have become, we've gone back to our gendered roles. The women are not just like cooking and cleaning and everything, but also now looking after online schooling and the greatest burden of all of the unpaid hard work, plus trying to hold their jobs, and which is why we're seeing female labor participation is crashing, right? Because it's just not possible for women and girls to really to be able to pay this higher burden. So I think poverty, patriarchy, the two things that lead to our girls being out of school or not being able to complete their education, both of these two P's are being made much, much, much worse by the pandemic. And there was a report that was saying that for extreme places in the world, it would take another 99 years for gender parity to be achieved. And the biggest thing that keeps me up at night is 9 years just going to double now. When are we going to see that our girls have the same opportunities as boys, and where we were thinking that we were on a path to creating that impact. I think this is going to set us back in a very big way. Um, Everybody, the other thing that really keeps me up at night is this whole move to edtech, and this is the new sexy thing. It's about edtech solve the world's problem. But I think we need to really focus on the digital gender divide, which is massive, which is serious, which is going to push our women and girls behind much further. I was listening to Anil from Adda 24/7. They do all the test prep and stuff from tier 1 and tier 2 and now I think even tier 3 cities. And he was saying that, of the millions of users they have on their tech platform, less than 20 are women and girls, right? So, and that's you're talking about the cities. So the minute you get beyond the tier 2 cities, etc., it's just like a black hole. There is complete and total, I would say, at least for the for-profit edtech solutions, complete, because nobody's willing to pay for the girl child, and nobody's willing to give her the handset if it comes down to online schooling. We have had cases in Ajmer where girls, if they were seen using the mobile phone, automatically it was assumed it had to be a boyfriend issue. The family's honor was at stake. The girl was slapped around by the brother. She tried to commit suicide, was shipped off to her husband's home. So child marriage, there's so much. The control on women and girls is going to go up exponentially. And my worry is that with such a big gap when schools open, will there still even be a demand side appetite to send the girls back into school? And we have these really serious problems around this. So I think just what, and I was reading the Jan Saha's child protection report yesterday around violence. I mean, it's never ending when it comes to gender issues. It's absolutely never ending. And they were talking about violence and, rapes and sexual violence against women. And they were like, the lockdown, I think, there was some data that's come out saying, oh, it's a lot less is being reported. A lot less is being reported because 94% of violence which is inflicted upon women happens in the home by somebody she knows. Right? So there's enough to keep us awake at night. I mean, and there's enough to worry about for our girls.
But I thought the point around the digital gender divide was very interesting, that even with these new technologies that we think are going to revolutionize education, it's still only going to do it for half of the population, and the other half is going to be left behind. And that's shocking and upsetting, because we all thought that technology would be the great leveler and would create more equality, and so I mean, that's very upsetting. Govind, I see you have a question. You have your hand raised. There are a lot of questions in the chat box, and I don't know that we'll get to all of them, but I'm going to let Govind go, and then I'm going to try and get through these questions in the chat box as much as we can.
Yeah, thanks, Amita. Thanks, Safeena and Anshu. That's been quite interesting, really different points of view. But I want to pick up the last point, Safeena. What can we do to, as a society, really change that perception that women, when they get onto their mobile phones, aren't really educating themselves but doing something else? What can we do as a society, and what can we do as something to drive that cause? Because it's such a telling point, and I just wanted to ask you for perspective.
Yeah, I think Govind, really, and I say this, I think we will solve this. Like, let's for a moment that India goes to bed tonight and then wakes up tomorrow with this belief, this sort of little switch goes off in the head, and suddenly everybody wakes up believing that sons and daughters are equal. Mm-hmm. If that happens, we will not have any of these problems, because we will see women and girls as human beings, not as objects to be exploited or for my, or to be controlled, because we will see them equally. And I think that's all that needs to happen, because it's a mindset issue. I think all of us have such a big critical role to play, challenging it within our homes, within our families. And let me tell you, it is hardest to challenge it with family, and within your own home. Just the smallest things. Notice that when the doorbell rings, who gets up first to go and answer it? It's usually going to be a female member, right? The smallest of things is a symbol of patriarchy and is a symbol of that unequal power dynamics between men and women and girls. And I think for us to daily raise awareness, to call it out, to challenge it, is, I think, the biggest thing that we can do. And changing our own mindsets, I think, really changing our own mindsets and seeing our sons and daughters as equal is really the way to go. And then also just making sure whatever you're doing, whatever business you're in, whatever you're doing, you have a strong gender lens. And there's so many examples of this. And I was talking about this, and I just read an article, even in the COVID vaccine, right? Why are women suffering much higher rates? They're saying almost 77% of women are actually having much more reaction than men. Why? Because the vaccines, the default template is for weight, for whatever, for size, height. So women are probably getting a stronger dose than they actually really need to. So any business you're doing, any work you're doing, where is your gender lens? And the minute you start to look at it, you will serve women and girls a lot better in whatever your work is. And then challenging it at a societal level is, I think, really, really, really clear. And I think in our content curriculum, we have to talk about honor as not something that rests in a woman's vagina or in her choices or in her behavior. Your honor is based on what you do and what you achieve and how you hold yourself up in society. Consent, honor, there's so many of these things, I think, that we have to talk about explicitly and embed them in the education system in a big way.
Thank you.
Thanks, Safeena. Anshu, there's a question, and I think I want to ask you both, but I'll start with Anshu. It's from Charu. What are your biggest learnings? And maybe those learnings came from a setback or a failure. And how do you handle that? What are the things that have not gone right? What have you learned from it, and how did you handle it?
Let me add a line to the earlier conversation. One very important part is that let's choose better leaders. I think that's one of the biggest problem in this country and the states and everywhere we talk about. And the second most important part out there is that we also need to change the conversations which we are having in our own, dining table and drawing rooms, because that's the most bothering part. When a rapist is killed in Hyderabad in an encounter or Hathras happens, we do need to talk for sure. It cannot be such a geographical thing, because the issue is the violence and the women and the gender and all that. The issue is not Hathras or Hyderabad. And these kind of conversations, we also need to make sure that these kind of conversations happen in your organization also, because otherwise those people for 8-10 hours are with you in their most productive time, and that is where, if we are not discussing, there is a problem. So at Goonj, we do discuss all these issues a lot. Now to come back to this particular question, Amita, if you can just repeat it once.
Sure, happy to. What have been some of the big setbacks you faced in your work? What have you learned from that, and how have you dealt with it?
Cool. So my, and also as an institution, our core belief is that how do you use the lenses of people with whom you're working? I'll give you a very simple example. So when we started working on the menstrual hygiene issue, and it was an absolute taboo subject there, and you go with your idealism that it is not a women issue, it's a human issue. Okay. So we want men and women to come together and then talk about it. Then you realize, you do it, and then you say, okay, now the man is sitting, that the women is not talking. Then you say, okay, now we will do with the women. In the next meeting, you find if the mother-in-law is sitting, the daughter-in-law is not talking. So we said, now this has to be a completely different approach, that we have to really do these segment-wise, and then we need to bring people together. Number one. Number two, we own our earlier arrogance of, studying in the privileged schools and speaking English and wearing good clothes and all. We often go and we think that we know the problem, we know the solution. I'll share a very simple story of Madhya Pradesh. And we are there, and this We said क्या करना है, मतलब what should we do, what is the issue? They said साहब there is issue of water. So we say but there is a hand pump and the hand pump is next to the Barsati river, fine, which obviously that means that's a recharge area, so it never dries up that river, and you are only about 40-50 families, so it's easy to handle with that hand pump. So this Babaji of the elderly of the village, they said, "Ki sahab, bilkul theek hai, you are absolutely right, and the hand pump never dries, but in the rainy season, when it rains, the water is like 2 feet, 4 feet, or whatever. The hand pump is not accessible." So all our theories of urban learning that the hand pump should be at the rechargeable water recharge area, and one hand pump is enough. From the outsider lens, it is absolutely fine, but from the user's point of view, it is absolutely crap because the hand pump itself is not accessible. Don't even talk about water. So all our theories fail. When I asked them कि क्या करना चाहिए, what should we do? They said, कुआं खोदना है, we have to dig a well. I said, have we ever done it earlier? He said, yes, it happened. And I said, how many feet? They said about 100, 150 feet. And the water was not there. So I said, why do you think that we can do it? And I just asked them कि अच्छा क्यों नहीं निकला पानी, आपको क्या लगता है? You know, their statement was, उन्होंने हमारी सुनी नहीं. Okay, they didn't listen to us. So मैंने कहा ठीक है, आप क्या बोलना चाह रहे हैं? बोले आइए मेरे साथ आइए, come with me, I'll tell you where the water is. So you know, he brings a coconut, and then he roams around with a coconut. And at one particular point, the person says that water is here. What will people like me and you do? We will laugh. Because the belief system of the financially weaker system, population, is actually a superstition for us. We are not understanding that 20 years back, there were no machines. Even in hundreds and thousands of people, even today, the machines don't go. But every village used to have a well. So there was wisdom. Now, what is the relationship between that coconut water and the water, inside your earth? That's a subject of science. And if science is not able to prove, it might be a failure of science also. But that technique works. So these people roam around with a coconut, and at a particular place, the coconut starts shaking, and then they tell you the water. You will not believe, Amita. Pehla mera arrogance tha. Obviously, we said कि यार ये क्या हमको बेवकूफ बना रहे हैं. But then you imagine that if it was your grandfather who was a English graduate of the British era, who was a gymnast champion, which has nothing to do with the water and the knowledge of water, but I would have justified somehow. Because my Babaji is educated, he is saying that. And this person is risking his life, okay, going down, and me as a consultant or as a worker or whatever will come out. People will be after his life if they don't get water. We trusted. In 18 feet, we got the water. And since then, we have been using the local wisdom, the traditional ways of finding things. And there is hardly any case where they said, and we didn't find it. The failure rate is absolutely nothing. So I think, so a lot of places we went with our own arrogance, and then we realized that villages and the people in the villages are the biggest universities for us. All this talk of empowerment and this and that, I feel somehow I don't agree with those words many times. I think it is important to treat people as a stakeholder, and it is important to understand that in many things they know much better than us. This is how maybe my great grandfather or grandfather had some wisdom, because they were so rooted to these realities, and they were not reading the same things through Google or in the textbooks, but they were actually looking at it from their eyes. Maybe that is the reason they had much more wisdom than me, because I am actually dependent on the second-hand information. That too, in the Google era, I will type distressed farmer. I will never type a skilled farmer. So if I say distressed farmer, Google will give me 1,000 stories of farmers in distress. They will never talk about the skill of the farmer. दो आम की कलम जोड़ के तीसरा आम जो बना देता है, वो इनोवेटर नहीं है. और मैं IIT में कुछ एक मॉडल बना देता हूँ जो कभी यूज भी नहीं होता, मैं इनोवेटर हूँ. This has to change, and this is what we have learned. हम भी उसी एरोगेंस से आए थे, ये तो सच है. हम भी वहीं पढ़े हैं, वैसे ही फैमिली से आए हैं, वही हमारा इकोसिस्टम है. बट आई थिंक इट्स गॉन. to the large extent. अलग तरह की arrogance आ गई होगी, but ये वाली तो गई.
Thank you, Anshu. That was very powerful. Safeena, I'll ask you the same question. Kind of, what have been the setbacks? What have you learned from them? How have you dealt with them?
Yeah, I think so many setbacks. But maybe I'll pick a couple that was sort of major for us. One was, when we started the entire piece around Team Balikas, and uh, we had this vision in our mind that they would all have to be women, and so it would have to be a movement of women and girls, who are coming together to educate other girls. And because it's a volunteer position, we have these recruitment events and we ask people to sign up. And every time we did that, we just had a lot of young men and women sign up, but a large number of young men. And we went back and we changed our outreach. We said, हमारे messaging में कुछ problem होगी, कुछ तो होगा. मतलब we were just like constantly thinking, ये क्यों हो रहा है? Why is it that we're not getting to just girls? Why are we getting so many young men? And we really thought that we had sort of failed in what we had set out to do, and we were not able to build a model where we could to do this. And I think it took us a long time to come back and to revisit it and challenge our own assumptions and our own biases and our own prejudices, because we all have our own, even if it is a gender prejudice, even I have tons and tons of them. And we sat down, we said, why is it such a big deal if a young boy actually wants to volunteer for girls' education? And it really struck us, after a while, saying actually it is the most powerful thing. If a young boy stands up in this village and he says, नहीं नहीं हमारे गांव की हर लड़की स्कूल जाएगी, तो ये तो हमारे लिए बहुत गर्व की बात है, ये हमारे लिए बहुत ही अच्छी बात है. And that's exactly what we want, eventually, is that all men and women are standing up for equity. And yet हमारे दिमाग में ऐसा भूसा भरा है कि अगर सिर्फ औरतें होंगी तभी ये सक्सेस हो पाएगा. So I think that I see as, we constantly saw it as failure, and then we had to kind of go back and recheck and be like, actually, what the universe is showing us is that this is what it really needs to be, and that we need to change our own thinking around this. And then I think in terms of failure, we all make really decisions sometimes in terms of hiring, and we pay massive costs for it. And one of the things that I think I have to talk about is our board, because Anshu talked about humility and all the rest of it, and I think I have a board that slaps us around if we don't do well. Like, they just really rip into us. I think the only ambition I have and the team has is कि एक बार हम board meeting में जाएंगे और board हमारा बोलेगा, "Gosh, कितना अच्छा काम किया," जो आज तक नहीं हुआ है. मतलब, and Louis and Ganesh are on our board, and they can vouch for the fact as to how tough my board is and how much we get like just slammed around. So I think that is one of the things that prevents us from making really huge mistakes, is because up on a lot of those pieces beforehand, and they're sort of pinning us and saying, "Isko theek karo, abhi theek karo, because this is what will kill you." Like, really, and that's one of the things. And I think personally for me, and I think it's a real struggle, is just, and I feel that this is the other third pillar that we do, is managing, I think, as a leader, your own energy. And I kind of feel like if I'm able to manage my own energy on a daily basis, and believe me, it's a struggle on a daily basis. If your energy level is low, if you're already so stressed and so anxiety ridden that you can't see things clearly, you actually end up making really poor decisions. When you're really afraid of the world out there, because it is really scary when, and Anshu, I don't know if you feel it, but I definitely feel it, कि आपके जब इतना scale होता है, so it's kind of like riding a tiger. Everybody's like, "Arey वाह, देखो tiger पे बैठे हैं," and you're thinking, "Oh my God, I'm sitting on this tiger. How do I get off?" Like, it's tough. It's not easy, and it's a lonely job, and especially as a leader. And I think most of the mistakes, I won't call them failures, but a lot of the mistakes I make are when I'm not managing my own self, and I'm too busy trying to manage other things. And that causes a lot of mistakes, people mistakes, not seeing things clearly, not making the right decisions at the right time, procrastinating on decisions, right? नहीं उसको बुरा लग जाएगा, इसको बुरा लग जाएगा, and not doing what really needs to be done now. So I think that's the other really major piece that I would say is a struggle. It's hard. Some days you do really well, and I kind of jot it down for myself if I do feel like आज थोड़ा अच्छा किया था. You know, you have to come at it almost every single day.
Thank you. Wow, both of you, that was amazing, very powerful. On behalf of everyone on this call, thanks for giving us such a great start to the day and so much to think about, really, a lot to think about. Personally, I think I'm going to go back and rewatch parts of this session. We will make the links available to everyone on this call. If you want to share it with anyone else, we'll get you the link to the session. But thank you, Anshu. Thank you, Safeena. All the best for your continued success in your journeys. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, Safeena. Thanks, Anshu.
Thank you for an excellent session. Thank you.
And Safeena is gone. Okay.
No.
Thank you for a lovely
I'm
session.
right
I'm just a bit worried. I think the next board meeting, don't attend it because there's some chat group about the things in Ganesh. I think you should avoid it.
Yes, I think that's wise advice.
I was just telling Louis, she means somebody else.
So Ganesh, next meeting we start off by saying fabulous work. We will not criticize. We'll be slammed in public.
Thanks, Anshu.
Okay.
Thanks,
bye,
Anshu.
bye,
Thanks,
bye.
bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.